Hey guys, welcome to our second video on ancient Greece. So if we remember where we left off, we were just talking about the first people of Greece, and we stated that the first people of Greece were the smaller cultural group on the island of Crete that we called the Minoans, and we said the Minoans were lived by King Minos. Right? So we said that Minoans had a really peaceful civilization. They grew, they traded, they had good ideas to attack piracy. On the waters to protect their trade routes and so on. And then we said all of a sudden in 1450 BC, that this group all of a sudden goes away. We said that there were a few different ideas for this, but most likely that there was a group called the Mycenaeans that came in and took them over. So today we're going to look at the Mycenaeans and figure out who they were. So if we look at the Mycenaean civilization, these were a group of people that about 2000 BC, they traveled from Central Asia down into Greece. Remember, a lot of these people are traveling at this time. Remember, agriculture is new, there's nomadic groups, and they're going to start to settle down. In 2000 BC, they left Asia and they settled in Central Greece, and they mixed with the native people already living there. Now, we didn't know a lot about the Mycenaeans until they discovered the ruins of their civilization, of their palace. And those ruins were found in the 1800s by a guy named Heinrich Schliemann. He was a German archaeologist. Now, what he discovered in Central Greece was this palace. And it was a palace that was way up on top of a mountain. And they called it the Palace of Mycenae, and then the people became known as the Mycenaeans. Okay, so he called them that. It's not that they found like a word that pointed them in that direction. So if we look at the Mycenaeans, okay, this is what they discovered in the 1800s, and I know my head's blocking a little bit of it. All right, so in the bottom right-hand photo, that's the actual palace and the foundations that they discovered at this time. So if we notice, we can see just how high up the palace is. We can see that everybody in the palace lived together. There are pathways, there are different homes, there are open areas, and so on. The palace itself was guarded by these very tall walls, and on the top of those walls were guards. So if we think palaces, and a lot of times we think castles like in Europe, this one's kind of close to that. You know, they're way up. We got those walls that we see like in Robin Hood and so on. A lot of people are living here, but then we have to question, well, why did they put this palace way up on the hill? On the left-hand side on the top, like we said before, once these foundations are found, they usually try to make replicas or model versions to see what it probably looked like in real life, since they're only going by the foundation in the right-hand photo. So if we look at the Mycenaean civilization, in the palace we know that they had kings. So the kings were the ruler. They all lived on palaces on this hill. Again, like we mentioned on the last slide, there were these large stone walls that went around the palace. All of that, the hill, the walls, and so forth, number one reason is protection. Now that we have a leader, if there is a war or a conflict and we are the attacking nation, so if we were going to go in and attack someplace, our goal is to get to the government, the palace, the house that the person lives in, and so on. Our goal is to take out that leader. Once the leader is taken out, at least at this time in history, that means that you own that land, right? So if people attacked the Mycenaeans, they would have to go into the area of Mycenia. They would have to climb up that mountain, which is going to be super tricky to do. They're going to have to get over those guard walls, and into that palace that had all those different buildings and take out the king. Since that palace is going to be heavily guarded, that's going to be extremely unlikely for those attackers to do. It's going to take a lot of planning and a lot of men to actually able to succeed. So if we look at these areas, the kings lived, in the palace, but now we have a new group of people. And this group of people we're going to hear about often throughout history, and they're going to be called the nobles. If you think of chain of command, like in our country you have the president, the vice president, the secretary of state. If we think of the chain of command, we have kings, and underneath the kings are going to be nobles, right? So the king is going to be the guy that makes the decisions and makes the laws, makes those those tough decisions for everybody. The nobles are the ones that run the land. They own the land and they control the people on the land. Okay, so they're going to be living on estates. Estates is a real fancy word at this time for a very large farm. Okay, so they're going to live on estates and smaller palaces, and then they're going to own all the land around them. If you've ever seen the movie Robin Hood, like the adult version, not the cartoon, they talk about nobles and they own the land and so forth. Kind of the same concept. Okay, so these nobles controlled the land, they controlled the workers, and at this time slaves are becoming more common. Okay, because we're going to notice that people can't pay debts anymore. We notice there's a lot of conflict for prisoners of war and so on. Okay, now the palace itself, so if we go back to the kings, okay, was the center of the government. So the king is going to live there, all his closest guards, people that help him make the decisions and the laws and so forth, all live at the palace. That's why it's so big. He also, in Mycenae, had a lot of different artisans living at the palace. Remember, an artisan is simply a person who has a skilled job. So they made leather, clothes, jars, weapons, and so on. Okay, at this time, the government is actually collecting taxes, so that's something that we haven't talked of before. Remember, they do not have money yet, all right, but they are going to start collecting taxes in terms of honey, wheat, and livestock. So in order to live on the land that you do, okay, these people would have to pay taxes in either every 6 months or every year, and it would be in the form of stuff. Okay, and they're going to give the government stuff, all right, that the government can then trade with other nations. So honey was a really valued product. We might think that's strange, but it was valued at this time. Wheat and livestock, they would trade with other nations in order to become more wealthy, okay, even though they did not have money at this time. So the Mycenaeans are going to trade a lot, and one of their main groups they're going to trade with are the Minoans. Now, we mentioned this in class on Friday. Okay, the Mycenaeans were very envious of the Minoans because their civilization was so peaceful and prosperous, and the people liked living there, and trade was good, and people were happy, and everything started, okay, to rise. Okay, so they were, okay, very envious of them. So what the Mycenaeans are going to do, okay, they're going to adopt as much as they can from the Minoans. Okay, a lot of their beliefs came from them. A lot of their skilled workers, okay, and how to do things came from them. So the Mycenaeans learned how to build ships, okay, from the Minoans. Remember, the Minoans are an island nation. Their ships were perfected. They worked really well. They were large in size. The Minoans taught them how to work with bronze. The Minoans, again, since they're traveling by ship so often, they also figured out navigation. They realized that they could use the sun and the stars, okay, to figure out where they were in the water, and they taught the Mycenaeans how to do this. They also adopted their religion. At this time, they worshipped one of their gods, the chief god, was called the Earth Mother. And you can see how they replicated her in the top right-hand photo. The Earth Mother was simply the god, you know, that created the world and everything in it. Similar to like Mother Nature, if we think of like things in our day. So in the 1400s, after the Mycenaeans learned everything they can, and they gained that friendship, and they were just the best of trade partners, okay, the Mycenaeans are going to turn on the Minoans, and they're going to come in and they're going to conquer them. And when they conquered at this time, a lot of times they either took all the people as prisoners of war, or they just killed everybody that was there and took the land. Remember, people wanted land at this time because land is going to equal money, okay, and power. So the Mycenaeans turn on them, they backstab them, okay, they take over the island of Crete, and the Minoans are wiped out forever. Okay, again, that's leading to wealth and power. Now, at this time, they are going to expand their military strength. They're going to say, well, if we can take the island of Crete, what else can we take? You know, what other land is out there that we could control to gain more resources, more things that we can trade to have that wealth and power. So they had a lot of successes in the Trojan War, which we don't get to talk about a whole bunch in this unit, but we will in the next one. Okay, so as the Mycenaeans take over, they're going to get kind of greedy. They're going to go out and try to take over all this land. Well, if their main focus is to take over land using their military, the one thing that they're not focusing on is all the jobs, on farming, on trade, and so forth. What keeps a civilization going are those workers. Okay, if they're concentrated on gaining land, they're going to take all those workers and now they're going to become soldiers. Okay, so trade declines, and eventually the Mycenaean civilization is going to decline. Okay, as it declines, okay, what we're going to notice is that the world right now is in this sheer competition of power. Okay, and their power comes from how much land that they have. So we have all these different kingdoms, and all they're going to do is fight. Well, if the whole world is fighting and concentrating on that military, they're not concentrating on jobs. They're not concentrating on agriculture, skilled jobs, or trade. And if you're not concentrating on them, okay, their civilization is going to decline. Okay, people are going to become extremely poor. Natural disasters at this time also happen. Okay, so as the world was at war, okay, one group that ends up coming out is a group called the Dorians. The Dorians, again, are just like the Mycenaeans and every other kingdom. They want land. Okay, so what's going to happen? They're going to invade the Greek mainland. They're going to take over. The problem is everybody's going to keep on fighting. So as the Dorians are going to be fighting over more and more land, just like the Mycenaeans did, okay, they're going to enter a time period called the Dark Ages. The Dark Ages are going to be a time frame when everything slows down, trade slows down, technology stops. Okay, people are extremely poor. They don't have food because everybody is fighting. Okay, this is going to be a terrible time for the people, okay, in this area, okay, as everything is focused on that military. So as the people become more poor and trade slows down, okay, writing also stops. They had no reason, okay, to write things down that they traded because they weren't trading. All right, farmers at this time turned to subsistence agriculture. Okay, subsistence agriculture means instead of producing a variety of crops to sell to other people, now they're just going to produce a variety of small crops for their family to live on. Okay, enough to feed their family. Excuse me. So writing and record keeping is going to stop during this time. Okay, so the Dark Ages were a time when everything slows down, the people are poor and unhappy, and so on. Okay, the one thing that came out of the Dark Ages, and this is the one thing that you probably should remember, the one thing that comes out is that the Dorians figured out a new type of metal. So remember in the last unit we said they found copper and tin and then they mixed them together and made bronze. Okay, the Dorians at this time found out iron. Okay, and iron is going to be that metal that is found in many places. So it's very abundant, okay, throughout the world, meaning that it's going to be cheaper than bronze because bronze was less found. Okay, it's also going to be stronger. So as the Dorians find iron, their weapons are improving, they have more of it. Okay, and the Dorians' quest for land is going to grow because they feel that they are quite strong. Okay, during this time frame, all the people in Greece, okay, fearing the Dorians because they're going to come and attack and usually kill all those people, are going to flee. Okay, so any of those native people living in Greece flee to different islands, the Aegean Islands, off the shore of Anatolia, and so on. But we're going to stop here for today. We'll continue on how the Dorians end in the next one.